Hi, listeners. Welcome to It's the People, our interview series where we explore the inside story of building companies and investment portfolios with high-octane founders, limited partners, and fund managers. We hope these conversations push you to be even better at what you do. In this episode, my partner Wills Hapworth and I, Andy Greenfield, had the opportunity to interview Hugh Davis, who helped start and grow Greenfield Online, the world's first online market research company, and then went on to be the co-founder and co-CEO of Crtical, which is a leading provider of online survey and digital data, and which was acquired by Dynata in 2019. Hugh is also an ironman triathlete and has demonstrated how this endurance has translated to an exceptionally successful business career. In today's conversation, we discussed a range of topics, including how the worst decisions might simply be the ones you hold on to for too long. Own it and move on. How wisdom is real, and that when Hugh was 19, he didn't appreciate that other people had actually been there and done that, and he didn't need to solve everything himself. How even when you're two founders in a garage, you should always act like the company you want to become. How being a successful endurance athlete is great training for being successful and building companies and leading them for years, and much more. To start things off, Hugh begins the conversation with his life story in 60 seconds.
Before we begin, we'd like to note that this interview is for informational purposes only, and that the opinions expressed should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. TIA Ventures is a seed stage fund focusing primarily on early-stage business-to-business technology companies, with an obsessive focus on end customers and early teams.
To get rolling, Hugh, can we have perhaps a 60-second version of the last 30 years? The Hugh Davis professional life.
Well, 30 years and 60 seconds. Let's see if we can do that. It actually all started when I met Andy, my sophomore year in college. Interning and working at a company that he owned. We together cooked up an interesting idea, which turned into a 16-year journey. We got to experience a little bit of everything from raising funds to growing the business, to right-sizing the business, to ultimately taking the business public, to then taking it private, which was an amazing experience. We could talk about that for days. After that, with my business partner at the time, Keith, we decided we wanted to reinvent the industry again and built a second business. And we ran that up until a couple of years ago when we sold that. And now enjoying a little bit of time off, but more important, taking advantage of this, which I call my creative hiatus, to really drive, where things are going to be going next, talking to companies. It's a lot easier to talk to companies when you're not selling something, to hear about what they're thinking and what their needs will be for the future, and getting ready for chapter 3.
Great. Thank you. One of the things I am curious about is when you sold Crtical, you were in a position, you're still a young guy, relatively, you're in a position to hang up your spurs, sit back and just sail through the rest of your life. You were financially secure. You're a guy who has multiple passions. We're going to talk about those soon, non-related to business. Well, you didn't do that. You stepped into an operating role at Dynata, and now I hear you're cooking something else up. Why when you had the chance to say, you know what, I busted my tail for 30 years, succeeded, I'm done. Why are you still going?
Well, I mean, that's probably the same reason you are. I'm a curious person. I like to be around people. I like to solve problems and have some, challenges in front of me. And I do enjoy it. I will say it's nice to do it with, a little bit of financial freedom. So you can, have a little bit more of picking and choosing and when and how and what. But I just get really excited for, for business. I enjoy the creation process. I enjoy surrounding myself with smart people. I enjoy meeting new people, and it would get pretty lonely, doing that by yourself.
Yeah, there's another thing I've always been curious about. When you walked into my office many years ago, you were, I think, were 19. You were a sophomore at Fairfield U. You're an intern at the company doing some pretty basic stuff. And you walk in.
I was making sandwiches. Let's just be real.
you walk into the CEO's office. That took, I think, a lot of courage. And you walked in and you kind of laid an idea on the table. This crazy thing that we know would go nowhere called the internet. But what inspired you to do something like that when most, like 99% of people would go, yeah, the last thing I'm doing is walking in to my boss's office to sit and say, here's something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would really, turn that, back on you, because you were the boss's boss. And, you created an environment where I don't really think you cared where good ideas came from. And I had seen that, and I had witnessed that, and I saw that's how you treated, other people around you. And I've heard you listen to good ideas and bad ideas. And that really gave me the confidence. And, also part of it might have being just a little bit naive. Never really thought what the outcome could be or where it could go. I just believed that there was an interesting opportunity and a slightly better way to do what we were doing. And I was lucky enough to have a person that would listen and take it seriously. So, looking back on history, it's fun to rewrite it and fill in the blanks with, much more, important words. And I was courageous, and I built up the courage. It just, to me, it was more an opportunity and an environment where that opportunity could be looked at.
Hugh, I'm curious, were there examples that come to mind prior to you meeting Andy where you had done kind of something similar? Hey, here's a way of looking at this or thinking about it that maybe nobody is, and I'm going to stick my neck out on the line and see what people say.
Not necessarily examples, because again, I was very fortunate to meet Andy at such a young age. But I always kind of knew that I wanted to follow my own path. I would always do well in school, but, oftentimes we get distracted and be thinking about other things and wanting to go to other areas. I always knew that, I'd love to be in charge and build something. There was, it wasn't like, this was like my fifth idea. We tried out. It really was a great collaboration of, I think, there's probably, a half dozen or so people that actually just happened to be together around each other at the same time with different levels of experience and different, paths that they've already gone down in life. So the 19-year-old, paired with a 30-something-year-old, paired with a 40-something-year-old, all brought a passion and creativity behind something, and that made it work. So, it was really no one single person or idea or revolution. It was a combination of some really, really interesting people by fate coming together at a most random point in time. I mean, I remember Andy one time, hired a gentleman, that had been in business for a long time. And I believe, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, he applied for a female Spanish-speaking moderator. And Andy thought, well, that was an interesting tack to get a conversation into the company. Go over here and work with this other gentleman. So there was a neat group of people that came together to make all this happen.
And as I recall, our friend Paul was not a female, and he didn't speak Spanish. So he only missed the two primary job requirements.
But he had passion, drive, and a little bit more experience to help bring ideas to fruition.
If I may, just on this point, Andy and I have been going through the exercise of thinking through kind of the purpose of our work, why we're passionate about it, and then this whole category of things that we're calling guiding precepts. And we literally wrote down good ideas can come from anywhere. And you just said something along those lines, of kind of that being the culture at, at the organization when you met Andy. How do you, I'm assuming that's something that you carried forward in business and the companies that you built. It's one thing to say it. How do you actually, actualize it, preach it, build it into your DNA or the DNA of the organization?
Well, I mean, anything you build into the DNA of an organization, comes by setting the example. So, when you say, good ideas can come from anyone, and so many people have good ideas, but they fail to execute on the ideas or make it, make it happen. So, in the organizations that I built and bought and were part of, over the years, we would always, it didn't matter who you were, where you were, and, and we would say, bring your ideas and give people the opportunity to execute them. And there were people, I mean, one of the things that makes me most proud of the career is seeing the people around me succeed. And they would come with an idea and we'd give them enough resources to either prove or disprove their idea, but more importantly, to see if they'll actually do the follow through to get it done. So when you create an environment where, where people can be their best self and can come up with an idea, and it probably was, based on my experience, we'd love it. We would say, and I could list off, dozens of examples, over the years where some of the best decisions that we made did not come from, the people who you would think would be making them. It came from the people that were around doing it. So yeah, it just becomes part of your culture, and you give people the opportunity to take the idea. And, not everyone wants to run with it. I have a great idea, then someone else can take it. Or I have a great idea and I'm curious about it. I'm passionate about it. I need to do a little bit more work on it. We'd always give them the opportunity to do that.
So speaking about ideas, I just want to stay on this because Hugh, you've been, I think, immensely creative when it comes to mixing human ingredients together. And I think of your, I'm not sure what we would call them, sort of brain rubs down in Florida that you ran for a number of years when you were running Critical Mix. And you would gather together people from all sorts of walks of life. It wasn't the classic, let's get our clients and potential clients together and we really want to get some business. You would bring down people who had no business to give you, but just had either big brains, different experiences. Your guest speakers ran the gamut from Navy SEALs to astronauts to the foremost sleep expert on the planet. And you would gather together this combination of sort of neurons firing into space and put them all together to kind of see what happens. Can you talk a little bit about the thinking that produced those immensely stimulating summits year after year?
Yeah, I mean, I half joke and say, we created the party that I wouldn't get invited to unless I created the party. You're absolutely right. I just remember early on, people would say, well, that's a waste of money. You should just bring your top 50 clients and, put them up in a nice hotel for a few days and have big dinners and, they'll buy more from you. No, we always love our customers and we love our clients, but that's that doesn't grow a business. That doesn't, expand where you work. So we always would try to bring very, very different people with very, very different experiences from adjacent or completely different, industries. We talk about automation in our business. Well, the architecture industry is dealing with automation and designing buildings without humans. How are they solving it to be able to apply it to what we do? So it was great fun. I mean, we had some, year after year, we always had, and we always limit it to 50 people because more than that, it's a conference where people could disappear and not be engaged. And we always learned something. I know, Andy, you attended many, many years, and I think back to, some of the people we met, some of the connections that we made, and some of the different speakers that really got you thinking in different ways. So, when you talk about great ideas, I think it comes from bringing, a really dispersed group of people together, learning from each other, sharing what you're doing in your industry, and everyone leaves the room, better than when they came in. And we are doing it again this year. So we are firing that up. So there's a couple dates in January, Andy, that I'll have to make sure you keep open.
Oh, geez. I hope I make the list.
You will always make the list.
Hugh, I've heard a lot about these summits. Just two more questions on it. Do you remember where the idea came from for the summit? And how did you refine them over time to get more value out of them?
Yeah, I mean, again, the idea, like many ideas, there's not someone didn't wake up in the morning and say, aha, we must, do it this way. We always we continue to have a great group of really, really bright people, trying to think through. And we started with what's our outcome? Like we would say, well, we're trying to create awareness for our business, and we're trying to diversify the people who know about us. And we then saw a void. We all hated going to conferences, because it literally is, just everyone selling to everybody, and the speakers and the talk tracks sometimes just don't muster up. So we said, well, we want to create something where it's completely different, and it just sort of evolved. Year one, we did it and it went well, and then we took what didn't go so well and what went really well, and we just kept evolving it, year after year. And, and we are continuing to evolve it, to make it worthwhile. But no, it was sort of an aha moment that said, if we can bring, leaders of different industries together, you now have a network of people that's a little bit outside of the comfort group that you talk to, every day. I remember we brought a president of a university down to speak and be one of the participants, one of the 50 in the room. And so why have a university president there? Well, what can he bring to the table? And we're like, well, he's training and educating and, thinking. And some of us in the room are parents writing big checks to send the kids to college. They're going through a transformation through online and all the things that we're dealing with. He might have a different perspective than what we have. So again, it was all about just bringing really interesting people together.
Just to put the boldness of what you did in context, in my judgment, it was the kind of thing you might see it at a very big company that had a lot of resource and wanted to do some experimenting. But you started this when Critical Mix was relatively young and small.
Yeah. Well, again, we wanted to be the company that we wanted, that we envisioned ourselves becoming. And ultimately, I mean, as you guys know, you kind of have to walk the walk, act the act, right? If we acted like a small company that had all the excuses in the world that couldn't do anything, the experience that we gave people does not merit the budget of what we spent to do it, right? Because you could throw a lot of money at something and come out with a bad product. You can spend money very judiciously and put on an amazing experience for people. Yeah, we had a lot of fun putting that together.
So you said something just on this. It sounded like some of it came from just hating to go to the traditional conference. I start to wonder, we talk about this a lot internally, do good ideas have to come from pain, or can they also, is there another world where they can just kind of miraculously appear?
I think the other world is the one you want to encourage. Again, I don't want to disparage the conferences because we go to them and we attend them and we love them. But there's a different purpose, and what the purpose is for what you're doing. And it's a great way to stay connected and build your network and be present and visible. But you're not going to walk away, as leaders in business, inspired to turn left or take a chance on a different path. or meet a new person that you could call on for advice and support in a different way. So I love I love the non-traditional environments for inspiration.
So, Hugh, one of the themes we're going to touch on here, and one of the things I find fascinating about you as a person is interesting juxtapositions of things that you might not think would kind of go together. So I look at the chapter 1 of Hugh Davis and chapter 2. Chapter 1, Greenfield Online, total pioneer, world's first. We were voyaging where no man or woman had gone before. It's like building a car had never been built and you didn't know what the ingredients were. New to the world. Mm-hmm. Chapter 2, Critical Mix. Hugh Davis and Keith Price go and start a business in a category you used to describe as highly commoditized, lots of competitors. It wasn't like you came in and you said, finally we're using voice activated something, or we have the formula for invisibility, or there's this thing called the internet, or we're digitizing a pre-digital industry. So you have you're totally new to the world and almost a commoditized, highly competitive category. Can you talk a little bit about how you ended up winning big in a business that was so different?
Yeah. So, I would say, I would personally would never want to be in a business that wasn't being done by other people. I love businesses, and, that was a neat thing about what we did with, when we were building Greenfield Online, was that people were already spending money on market research and data and information. They were just doing it a different way. So we never had to go in and convince people, hey, create a brand new budget in your budget and spend money where you never spent it before. We were able to go in and say, hey, you're already spending money on this. Here's a new, better way of doing it. And we would just have to prove out that we were a better, more economical way. And that's not to say companies that invent things that are brand new can be successful. It's just a very different journey to do it. When we were doing Critical Mix, I remember, we had taken the company private. Microsoft had then come and bought it and took it public. Microsoft had then come and taken the company private. And I remember sitting there with Keith, my partner, saying, "Oh, we're done. We've done it all in research and data and all this. We're going to go do something completely different." And then when we stepped back, we said, this journey isn't over yet. And it's not over today. The demands and the way that people are using information and research and data to drive business decisions. What happens in 3 years when the decisions that people are driving aren't going to humans, but going to AI algorithms? When it's not going, the data isn't going to a PowerPoint presentation, but it's going and being fed directly into ad serving technology. So the journey is never ending. So when we were building Critical Mix, we said, wow, this is a great opportunity. We get a blank piece of paper. So we're not working with old technology. And we did that. We spent a year, laying out, and we had the privilege of doing what we had done for the previous 16 without the encumbrance of all the mistakes we made, during that time. We could actually start with where we think the next chapter is going. And I don't think any business has ever done, right? Yes, we started with the internet when it was brand new and, people didn't know what it was, but the people before us started with the technology and, hey, there's a fax machine now. We don't have to FedEx across the country. The generation before said, hey, we have a telephone now. We don't have to write a letter. If you think about where all this stuff is going, I would say no matter what business you're in, if you think you've reached the end, you should stop, you should go home. But if you think that there's always more to do, you're the right person to be leading that company. Because, you guys know what happens when you take your foot off the gas, it stops. Like, I'm fascinated today with all the, how our business is going to interact with their customers in the metaverse, right? That's like, people look at me like I got 3 heads when I talk about that, but hopefully someone might listen to this podcast in 10 years and will realize that, that method of communication and interaction and consuming information will become much more mainstream and will be as regular as going to a website to book a hotel room. So, that kind of curiosity, I think drives it. So I don't ever think of a business as being mainstream and in the competitor. And, even utilities or the most basic companies need, have probably a list of 25 things that they could be doing to continue to evolve and do. And if they don't, they should, because I can't think of a single business that says, hey, we've done it. We what are we on our 13th, 14th generation of iPhone? I mean, they could have stopped. I thought that was the perfect product. And every time it comes out, I'm like, oh, well, geez, I need to go buy the next new one. Apply that to anything. And I think you'll see that you have to make it better.
I was going to say, Hugh, in there was a comment about like starting with a blank piece of paper on this new business, not having the encumbrances of the mistakes that you had made. Were there, going into the new business, were there obvious mistakes that you didn't want to repeat? And were there things that you did want to, like patterns that you did want to repeat that come to mind, like the most, the ones that stand out to you?
Yeah. I mean, mistakes are, might be the wrong word. Now, clearly the list of mistakes we've made in business is endless, but more really the wisdom of knowing where a path goes because you've already been down it. And we're not saying you shouldn't take a peek down that path again, but if you go down the path and it's a brick wall, well, let's save us the 6 months and not walk down it again. But we'll take a little peek to see if that wall has come down, but we're going to go down a different way. No, I think, what we took was the parts that we knew worked, and the pieces that we felt, could drive the type of business that we wanted to operate, and I'm sure Andy has shared this with you. When we started Crtical Mix, it was my business partner and I, and we sat across the room and we looked at each other and said, well, what's the first thing, we need to do? Well, we said, we need to act like a big company. So we're going to do, quarterly board meetings to keep ourselves, honest and make us. So we did the first one with each other and we said, well, this is boring. We now need to, let's get the smartest people we know around us and build an advisory board to come in, and we'll now do our board meeting in front of them so they can, push back and ask questions and drive. We constantly just said, those were the best parts about what we did, was acting like the company that we wanted to be. I remember somebody, and again, you talk about good advice and bad advice, we were year one into business and we said, well, we should get our finances audited, why we don't have a lot of finances, because it will be easy to do and cheap. But we just sort of made that, a yearly thing. And it turned out to be brilliant, because when someone comes to buy you and you're that organized, neat company that, spend the $1,200 a year when revenues are light, to have your books like that, it made raising money easier. It made and again, most people don't think of that as a good use of funds early on. We, with our experience, said, wow, when we'd go in to buy a company, we bought lots of little companies to add in, and go in and the CEO or the founder, it's a drawer full of receipts, and you can't make heads or tails. And we really made money last month, but we didn't because we bought pizza. It doesn't look like a real business. And we, our $50,000 looked like it could be 60 million. The way that it was organized. So yeah, that's how we kind of took the approach of taking these ideas and taking the lessons of the past and applying them. We had been a publicly traded company, so we had all the Sarbanes-Oxley rules that we had to follow. Now, we didn't go as far as that, but we said, wow, there's some really good lessons to be taken from this, from process. So we put process and procedure in place early on, which was easier than try to apply it later on, when we were hundreds and hundreds of employees at the end. It's easier to have an expense policy when there's only 2, than changing 600 people to follow it. So we always tried to act like the company we wanted to become. And when we finally did, and Keith and I were actually talking about this morning on the phone. So when we sold our business from start to finish was just over 5 weeks, because their team was able to go in and look at everything back to day one in a clear, and the stories, the ups, the downs, the bumps, all had the data supporting around it.
I love that. I mean, at the risk of revealing, Andy, I'm sure you're thinking similarly, like some of the cheat codes that we've found to be most effective with our companies, particularly kind of post-investment, having good financial hygiene, even if you're a company of 3 with 5 customers, is just so compelling, for investors, for the team, for prospective talent, for the, your potential acquirer. It's a cheat code for sure that we've
100%. It is, and it actually pays off in spades with the when you come in, because you make a lot of promises when you talk to people that are funding you, and if you can't back up those promises with past behavior, I know when I would go into a company that was organized and diligent and in control, they'd always get a higher valuation than the one that was like, well, I think this is right, but we don't know, and we have gaps here. That's just that is an absolute way to sift through what's going on.
Those smoking bags of cash in the corner that they said, we haven't yet counted those. Hugh, you mentioned Keith, your partner, and we always say when we're talking to folks, mentoring entrepreneurs and stuff, like, who's running the show? Who's in charge? And I will tell you, I've been guilty of saying multiple times, 2-headed creatures in nature don't survive. However, you have been a 2-headed creature, you and Keith, incredibly successfully for a very long time. Can you talk about what it's like running a business with effectively 2 leaders?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I remember when we were building the business, people would advise us to say, hey, flip a coin. It doesn't matter. And in our case, it truly doesn't matter. Now, I would say you've got to pick a good partner. And Keith and I had the privilege to come together on our journeys over the years. But we always, we always found that we complemented each other very well. What he likes to do isn't my strong suit. So, Keith loves to be with a customer. If he got a call and the client was in New York City, he'd be the first one that would want to jump on the train to go take him out to dinner and hear about everything that's going on. I want to go to bed. And I'd love getting the phone call from Keith that says, I may have just promised that we would help them solve this problem, and I'd be up at 5 o'clock the next morning trying to work out a way to solve it. We also shared the same philosophies of running a business. Yes, the outcome and the financial reward is definitely a measure of success, and one that was very important to us. But even more important, we wanted a group of people in a place that we could go to every day that we were proud of, that we look forward to seeing, that we wanted the team to be, to be inspired and happy and run. So you share the same principles, who's there making the decision. And I'd imagine there might be a few entrepreneurs that might listen to this. I will tell you, having 2 at the top, definitely frees up a little bit more of your time. And I'll give you an example. When we were in our rapid growth phase, one of the things we wanted to do is be always available to our customers, and to have a business partner where you say, hey, Keith, I'm going to be off this weekend, like phone off. And he's like, his first thing is, I got you covered. And we knew that we could, work on a little bit of a balance between us and be there for our customers all the time, but not have to be there as one person all the time. So I'm not saying the co-CEO role is for everyone, but I am saying that, it can be effective. And if you find a partner, and there's been lots of case studies, because we would go look and see if you can find a partner who complements you, you'll actually, I believe, will be more successful. If your partner all they care about is selling the business and all you care about is growing the business, and they want to hire the cheapest labor possible and not invest in the employees, and you want to build an organization where people are empowered, it won't work. But if you're on the same page, it will work. So I am a big advocate of having a partner to help work through, especially a growing business.
Another interesting juxtaposition here. This is sort of a two-part question. We'll get to the second later. You've built a very successful career leading increasingly large teams. Mm-hmm. On your off days, you spend your time doing Ironman triathlons, which is a solo sport, no team stuff. Flying, again, a solo sport. I don't know if Amy handles the co-pilot role, but solo sport. Is it a powered surfboard you're using now?
Something like that.
Something like that. Again, a solo activity. Golf, you do play with somebody, but it's not teams. So can you talk a little bit about this juxtaposition of Hugh, I'll call it the athlete, after work set of passions, which seem to be kind of solo, versus Hugh leading men, women, and machines into battle as, leading teams?
Yeah. I mean, so, my passion is the endurance side of these things. I like, doing things that the outcome of what you are going to do requires a lot of time to get there, because the journey to get there, and I actually mirrors very much, after I did my first marathon, I just couldn't get out of my head the connection to building a business, right? You just don't go out and run 26 miles, you run one. You need a support system around you to help you with your first long run. And, maybe 6-8 months goes by and then you have the goal. When you're building a product and all you want is out there today, you can have your eye on the prize, but you can respect the journey to get there. Yes, I do. I guess you could say the things I like to do are individual, but I take those individual and try to do them with a group. So I like to do activities that, most people will say, well, that's impossible, or that's hard, or I don't know how you do it. Because I find it, very comforting. And it was, quite frankly, you spend your whole, I always talk about having my 3 balls in my life. I have my work, my family, and my passion for the endurance sports. And I would always say I could have 2 of them perfect at any point in time. I could never get, all 3. So if work is really busy, one of the other 2 has to move down. But what I did find with these types of sports, you can do, the time that you do them is not the time that's required by other people. So getting up early to go for a run, or, people say, well, I'm on the road, I have business dinners, I don't have time. I'm like, you don't have time for 45 minutes between end of A and start of B to go hit the treadmill in the gym or go run around the block in a new city to you. I always found that that time was my time where I could control it, where much of your time running a business is about other people. So I think they complement each other nicely.
And just on this, because I spent a little time kind of looking, through your background on your LinkedIn, you see, 16-year stints, at places. And that notion of like these endurance sports, I think, prepare you for what it takes to build companies. Were you into these endurance type activities prior to getting into business, or did you find them after, or how did that all play out?
I guess you could say I sort of found it in the first couple of innings. When back in the day with Andy, we were coming into work at 7 a.m, working till, God knows what time. And, I never look at how much time you put in as the measure, but, to folks that will listen that are building a business, they know what I'm talking about. There really is no downtime. But I probably I got into the sports because it gave me the outlet and the release that I needed, and the ability to de-stress and to get back outside and to be with nature. So I started, 20 years ago, with my first marathon, and kind of stuck with it consistently, all the way through. But I remember thinking, you can go down a lot of different paths in life, and getting yelled at for going on a 3-hour bike ride on a Saturday morning is one that I'll take. I'll take that as a criticism. But no, I just think there's so many, from starting a business to that, metaphors. I mean, they've been well documented and well talked about, and I'd say they're true. Like, if you set a long-term goal of where you want to be, and you accept where you are today, and you build a path to get you from A to B. If you don't have a path, you'll never get there. But if you have a well thought out path, some days you'll turn, and it won't go quite linear, but you'll stick at it, and you'll end up whatever your goal is. So if your goal is to raise the next round of funding, or to hit a revenue milestone, or to get the attention of another company, it'll all, they're all very similar.
Critical Mix was something you guys built totally.
Yep.
Two of you and Keith. Can you talk a little bit about that process? I was there when I was born. Mm-hmm. I watched you guys execute literally quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. But again, you were on the inside. Can you talk a little bit about some of the bumps or things that, where you're driving forward and you go, wait a minute, this is an unfinished bridge we're about to drive off of? Because from the outside, and this, we've talked about this, everyone only hears about the successes. Yeah, hear about like all the glamour, all the all the wins. What happened at Critical Mix along the way where you go, oh my God, what was I thinking? What were we thinking?
Yeah.
So, for our listeners, do you mind just in a sentence explaining what Critical Mix was, what you built, just so that they have context?
Critical Mix is in the data and insights industry, and we built tools and technology that allows businesses to make data-driven business decisions. And our differentiator, because everyone needs a little bit of a differentiator, was that we really tried to simplify the process for both the user of the information and who was receiving it. So we had built a very healthy business, and then got up to a few hundred employees, and then sold it. So it was a lot of fun. But to Andy's question, when it was two people, we would definitely make mistakes. Things would definitely take longer. A software release was supposed to be done, on this day, and it's 30 days behind, but you've already promised that things would be done, with it, during that time. It was no one did anything wrong. It's just running a business. You get surprises along the way. So what Keith and I did, we broke everything down into much smaller than most people do achievable milestones. So he and I and a partner, we called it the 3 things a day. We said, let's do 3 things today, and you do 3 things today. And we've now moved it forward. And if we do that 5 days in a row, we'll be this far forward, and this is where we should be. So we never set a goal like, by February of 2023, we're going to have this great grand thing, and everything coming to that point to find out if we were going to be successful or not. Because, you guys work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. The art of thinking about what you're going to do is much more enjoyable than actually doing it. And if you never go from idea and inspiration to execution, like, make that first sales call and be told no. Don't wait 6 months to make that first sales call until everything is perfect, because you'll find out that you've missed you've missed an opportunity. So we tried to really, to stay in the moment of where we were, be the best we could be in that moment, and then collect lots of moments. And, back to the 3 things a day, if you've got two people doing 3 things a day to build a business 7 days a week, after a month or so, you've got a lot of stuff done. And that was sort of always our approach to it.
I love that, 2 people doing 3 things a day. We used to sometimes tell entrepreneurs that success is just a function of 898 individual steps forward.
But you can't think of all those steps at one point or become overwhelming. Like you'll be debilitated, you'll just can't get it done. But, if you see progress and momentum, by just, you could go to an entrepreneur and, or CEO and say, what did you do yesterday? And they'll be like, I'm very busy. I was very busy. Well, what did you do? I was busy. I came in early. I stayed late. Well, what did you do? And you just keep putting, well, we had meetings. Great. Well, what did you do? Like, I would like to say I did A, B, and C to move the business forward. And I was very busy and did meetings. We're all very busy, but if you don't quantify that to an outcome, it just won't work.
Hugh, was there a mechanism for holding yourselves and each other accountable to this? Because I think sometimes I get to a Friday, I'm like, did I move the ball further downfield? And then if I go back through my task lists, I'm like, yeah, I did chip away at a bunch of stuff. Might not be obvious on a week-to-week basis, but it's only when I go back and look at it. Did you have some mechanism for, and sometimes I forget to look at it. Did you have a mechanism for truly holding yourselves and each other accountable?
Yes. That was, all part of the partnership and the business working. So we did have, we did track, and again, not every task needs to be a big one. It could be as simple as, what did you do today? I wrote a thank you letter to a customer. That's good. That's one thing. Like, one day it might be, I met with the attorney and redid all the contracts for how we work. Big thing. But, we did, and we pushed that down. Big part of what we did and Andy was a great inspiration on this. We always hired really bright people, really smart people, really motivated people. We built we wrote an employee handbook because the law says you have to have an employee handbook, but we operated under the adults work here principle. We don't need to tell you what time to come in. We didn't need to, and this was all pre-COVID, before, work from home was, a much more common experience. But we would inspire the employees to say, look, if going to your son or daughter's soccer game is an important thing, and that happens to be at 3:00 in the afternoon, build your day around that, but still take the calls, get the work done, and drive it that way. And, with treating people that way, that inspired them to pick up the habit of saying, yes, I did go to my child's soccer game for 2 hours this afternoon, but I also did all the other things I was supposed to do.
Hugh, let's dig in on this for a minute, because I appreciate the kind words, but everyone's going to try and say, hey, we hire smart, motivated people, but you built a cadre of folks who they seemed passionate every time I went in there. They worked hard. They worked long. You had very low attrition. You built a team that was just, produced more horsepower than an engine with that number of cylinders should produce. Can you talk a little bit about how you made that happen? Because I think the culture was part of it, because the Crtical mixed culture was very different than most other companies I've been engaged with. I would call it the Hugh Davis, Keith Price set of values. There was a number of things together, and I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit about how you used those things and thought about those things to just not just attract, but retain and motivate great people.
So, I guess it all started, with, what were our guiding principles? What's our vision? What's our mission? Why are we in business? And, Keith and I, we always kept that very simple, and we've repeated all the time. You see some of these businesses out there and they have 75 principles and they're going to be this to everybody. And it usually all started with the customer. the customer is going to be the king and everything's, we actually kind of started it with the other way. We work in an industry that's technology driven service. So we had, our customers were challenging. They were hard. It wasn't, they weren't always easy to work with. So we, the principle that I'll speak of on this was, when it was written, right up in the wall, we empower our employees. And by empowering them, we would give them the right tools to do the job. So, how appreciative people were when they showed up on day one and didn't have a $400 laptop, but had a nice shiny MacBook Pro. Seemed like a little bit of an extravagant expense starting, but it sent a message that you just left a firm where it took you 3 minutes to turn your computer on. Now you've got a tool. We'd also empower them with the little things like, a customer is spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars with you, yet you make a decision for a couple $100 and someone will tell you that was the wrong one. Where like we told our teams, you can spend up to 100% of the job cost that you're getting paid to make the customer happy. So profit will come, but don't worry about it on any individual. That had them acting like owners, and then no one ever took advantage of it. So if you hire the really smart people, then you've got to empower them, give them the tools that they need to be successful, and give them the safe parameters that they can operate in. One of the things, that I learned over the years that I would tell my younger self would be, you're not the only one that knows the answers. If you hire good people, you don't need to create all kinds of crazy rules and regulations and process. Get the right people in, then empower them to do their job, give them the tools that they need to be successful, and take down all the barriers that would block them from doing the right thing. Because people generally do want to do the right thing. But I think sometimes, because it's your job to make someone else's job harder, people would do that. And, Keith and I were committed to say, look, if these people are the smart as we think they are, and we're paying them as much as we're paying them, we need to sometimes step away. And that was hard sometimes. Like I remember we all sat in a very open environment back in those days, and I'd sit there and I'd be biting my tongue because Hugh Davis, would have done that a little bit different. But what they're doing isn't wrong. But I don't want to unempower them for the decisions and actions they're taking. And we did that for so long that, word got out that this was a great place to work. So then we had our pick of people that we have, and, people wouldn't leave. As you guys know, attrition is a huge challenge, especially when you have customers and reteaching them things. It was a, really deliberate program that we put in place. And as the CEOs, it's hard because, you want to be in charge. You want to make every decision. You want to, don't get me wrong. We had guidelines and we had rails that people had to stay within, but they were broad enough that they felt like they were empowered to do what they need to do for their customer on their day without always having to, look for somebody else.
What is that? I was just thinking the advice about somebody else may do it a little bit differently than you doesn't mean they're wrong. You don't have to, you have to bite your tongue. That could apply in personal relationships as well.
Absolutely.
That's very, very hard to go.
Hugh, I've heard many things from Andy about all the great achievements, the companies you built. We watch some of our companies go through dark hours, right? And they emerge from them. I'm curious, were there any dark hours that maybe you couldn't talk about then, but now you're a bit freer to discuss that, our audience would be interested in hearing about?
Oh, there are always dark hours. I mean, there are, again, this is the nice thing about history is when you look back 10 years ago, you can erase all the stuff that doesn't fit the narrative, and put it in. Oh my God, there were, from the days of true startup, working with Andy in the first 90 days, we used to carry the business around in a box. And one day there wasn't a room to sit in to put the box in. So I thought that, Andy didn't want to do this anymore. There were, we've gone through all the business cycles, so we were part of the big .com boom tied into the .com bust. We've had to let, good people go over the years, which is never an easy or fun decision. But, One that, sometimes, as a leader of the company, you've got to make the hard calls. We were always very, very fortunate. We surrounded ourselves with good people inside and outside of the company who had seen the dark days before. And, one example was a venture firm that we had worked with that was soliciting us they wanted to put money into our business. And when, it's a big decision for an entrepreneur who they take money from, because they're essentially now have a seat at your table. They're part of your family. And one of the principles of the company was like, yeah. Let's not talk about, what's going to happen when the times are good. Let's have a thoughtful discussion, because there are things that we can't control. We can't control the global economy. We can't control. And it was just such a thoughtful, and, Keith and I looked at each other and said, oh my God, finally someone that knows that we can control what we control. No one could have controlled the pandemic. I could not imagine. I could imagine there were some people bounding on, I don't care about a virus. We're going to still hit the numbers this quarter, and, get them. Like, those are not partners that you want to have around your table. We were always very fortunate that the people that we worked with would take a whole bigger approach. So when we had dark times, they weren't a surprise. They weren't, we were prepared with people that have been there, done that, so that we could navigate them through that as best as possible. Oh, but we one time did a project for a customer and flipped the data scale around and, told them turn left when they should have turned right. You think the world is over when those things happen. You get that pit in your stomach, and, because you care, you can't sleep. But again, you're working for other humans who have done similar things in the past, and, you own it, you lean in, and, those dark times, only stay dark if you allow it to happen.
Best business decision you ever made was?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. I wouldn't say it's a decision. I would say it's a series of decisions. One, taking risk. I'm happy I did not take the path that that's the comfortable one, the easy one. Write a resume, put it out there. Try to get hired. I think there's a certain people like myself that aren't wired that way. So I'm happy I took the chances that I did. The best business decision would be bringing Keith and I as a partnership. I couldn't have imagined, and we will always be in business together. Being connected with people like you, Andy, and the folks that you bring to the table that would help. So if you think you can do it alone, you can't. It does take a village. So I think it was a combination of all of that turned into a lot of little good decisions that came about.
Is there one that you regret? Pull the tape back.
I mean, of course, there are decisions that you've made along the way where you could have done them better. I'm one of those people that I'm always learning, and my finished product isn't there yet. So I believe it's okay to make a bad decision. I guess I would say the worst decisions that I've ever made are the ones that I hung on to too long. If I'm thinking about that decision 3 weeks later, I'm doing a disservice to what I can be doing in the future. So make a bad decision, own it. Hey, that was a really dumb idea, or gee, that didn't get the outcome that I wanted, or gee, we should have been more careful and not put a client in that situation. Own it, fix it, do your best to prevent it from happening again and move on. But we've all made decisions and we're 6 months later still thinking about it and re-bringing that pain into the process. Those are my worst decisions, the ones that I can't get over. And I should, but we work through it that way.
Yeah, I'm guessing only 100% of the listeners are nodding, going, yeah, those relationships I let linger too long, etc. You mentioned the word resume, and let me ask you a question. I don't know, but I think I know the answer. Have you ever written a resume?
No, not at all. It's gonna be my book one day. How to get through life without writing a resume. Now, writing a resume would have been the easy way to do it. Forming lots of one-on-one personal connections is much more difficult. But no, I'm generally unemployable at this stage of life.
I'm smiling because I give people resume advice, and at one point my daughters busted me. Said, "Dad, did you ever write a resume?" And I go, "Yeah." They said, "For what?" I said, "Well, for teaching philosophy." And they said, "Well, that didn't work. You didn't get any jobs."
But I think it worked out just fine.
And there was one little story, and I just want to share that our audience should know about. So Hugh was the guy who came to me in 1992, 93 with this crazy idea that you could use the internet for market research.
And our first business plan, Andy, I keep it very, very close by.
Oh, I love it. I remember paying for that binding machine. But the story that no one, very few people know is, so this was going to be the paperless future of research. Everything would be analyzed, with software, et cetera, no more paper questionnaires. And I remember that fateful day, you and Paul had executed the very first online research project done on the planet Earth. I was all excited. I come in to see, how did it go? It's paperless. And since every journey starts with something that didn't quite work, I look in the wall, I walk into the focus group facility, and the walls were covered with paper printouts of the questionnaires. Can you talk a little bit about that memory?
Sure, I remember that very well. And things do happen, and technology doesn't always work the way it should on the first time. And it just showed that Paul and I were not going to miss delivering to our customer. And yeah, we printed a lot of paper that day and tabulated a lot of things by hand. And I assure you, survey number 2 worked flawlessly because we didn't want to do that work again. That was the key for what was going on.
Wills, you had a question?
Yeah, well, so Hugh, you've been in the market research world for most of your career. You've been part of its transformation. We spend a lot of time, using qualitative market research tools on our end because we've seen them to be so effective. Any predictions that you have, and maybe this is a good segue into talking just quickly about what you may be working on, but any predictions about where you see things going from here, particularly in the context of your point about like, hey, if you think you're done, then you probably should be done and stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think the use of data to run businesses is at its infancy. A startup doing research and getting data and understanding their market is sort of that's my cheat code, which is you don't have to be smart. You just have to know what the data says and trust it, even if it kind of differs for where you are. And we're seeing that the users of the information are changing, right? The market research department used to be in the basement, run by statisticians who would never get invited up to the boardroom. Now it's being driven by the CEOs of companies who value good data and good information combined with their wisdom and knowledge to make future decisions. And, we always think of, I always like this industry that we're in because we're in the data creation space. And the answer was known, people would have it and it would be out there. If the answer is unknown, you need data and information to help formulate that decision. So I think what we're going to see is the increase for data going up, the ease of consuming it getting easier, and you think about all these algorithms out there that are driving AI and machine learning and all of that. Research data is just going to feed right into that as another variable. We won't even know what's happening, but it's going to help really drive some of the innovations we're seeing in other areas.
Can I push on you for 1 second about data? Because we sometimes say, hey, listen, the world is drowning data.
Yep.
What they really need is to turn that data into something else.
Yeah.
What if you had your wand out there? You could wave that wand over these huge pools of data that are growing geometrically. What do you turn that data into?
Well, I mean, we would say, let's turn it into like the 3 to 5 things that we need to know that are going to move the needle and not get hung up within in the noise. So much time is wasted on data and variables that don't matter. And I'll give you an example. I spent a lot of time now living on a small island, and they do a community data project, and it's run by, the economy here is very tourism driven. And if a data point in 2014, it was one service worker was able to service 10.9 visitors. And today it's one service worker is servicing 22.3 visitors. So a simple data point like that can drive so much decision-making from housing, from employment, from wages, and this. You don't need 1,000 data points to come in. Pick the one that matter and find one that uses it. So, for any business that's using data to help drive the decision, simplify it down. Like, get one data point or two that you can use to drive what you're looking for. You can't get it all. Otherwise, you'll get paralysis because everything goes, all over the place. Pick the points that matter, measure them, keep getting that feedback, keep learning, create the data that doesn't exist, and trust that it works.
Since most of us believe there are a number more chapters in the Hugh Davis story, are you able to talk at all about what the next chapter might involve, include, or be heading towards? And if not, no worries at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to include all the things that we talked about today that we love and what we're going to do. We love building businesses. We love inspiring others to help build businesses. We love, continuing to learn and evolve and, think about where all this stuff is going. So as we, think about what we're going to do next, our time is our most precious thing, right? And I want to put my time against things that I'm passionate about, that I like, that we believe in. We generally have the belief that, the world, is, the demand for good information is going to exist 50 years from now. It's just going to change how people are consuming it and using it, and who the buyer of it will be. So again, as an entrepreneur, you might think I'm crazy and the idea may never go, but I wake up each day, passionate about that and trying to find the niche of where this is all going, and have some fun along the way.
Hugh, you have the benefit now of being, a serial entrepreneur. And as we've seen in our industry, oftentimes it's a lot easier for serial entrepreneurs to get kind of the early funding they need to get going. That's juxtaposed with the thing that we always hear: past performance is not necessarily an indicator of, future results. Are there things that you keep kind of center, right front and center of your mind going into this next experience to ensure that you have the best chances of success, regardless of, whether or not you've done this before?
Well, there is, like you mentioned earlier, there is a little bit of a formula you can follow, and, a first-time entrepreneur will either surround themselves around people that can help them get there, or will figure it out on their own over time. Going into it, your second or third time, you kind of know what to expect and what's needed. So, your first time out raising money is very daunting, and, a lot of scrambling to get information together. And now you know what the questions are going to be and what you need to do. Not every business plan has to show, 200% growth every year out infinitum. Here's our first checkpoint, 6, 12, 18 months down the road. And here's the big opportunity that we're working towards. that takes a little bit of a discipline to put together. So as we think about it, we're like, I don't want to say we're going to say, oh, been there, done that, because the world is evolving, right? I've never led a company yet in a post-pandemic world. Where all staff is distributed and all the challenges are out there. So there is new learning and new things that need to be applied. But I definitely think there's a little bit of an advantage to having done it before and knowing the game hacks to get you to where you need to be.
Hugh, two final questions, because you've been generous with your time, and we're running a little over, and hopefully the plane's not leaving without you. Looking back, imagine you have your 19-year-old self sitting next to you as you're starting your journey as an entrepreneur. What advice, based on what you know today, what advice do you give young Hugh Davis?
I guess my advice that I would give young Hugh Davis is that wisdom is real. I don't think when I was my 19-year-old self that I appreciated that other people had been there, done that, seen similar problems. I kind of was of the mindset, well, I'm the one that has to solve it. And, it hasn't been done before. So I wish I picked that skill up a little bit earlier along the way, because there are so many people, and especially the most successful people are the ones that are the most generous with their time, because they have the confidence, and they're not always, they don't look at you as a threat or a piece. But if you ask for help, people will give it. So my younger self didn't ask for help enough, and I don't think I had enough respect for the wisdom of others.
And my final question here, I promise, is you're a guy with, I'd say, immense passions and drive and focus and discipline, energy. Imagine for a minute that the next chapters of Hugh Davis's life are not going to be building businesses in the market research arena. Imagine if it's maybe not even building businesses in relating to technology and software. So if you have to write your next chapter and it's going to be something completely different, what does Hugh Davis write for his next chapter?
Well, I mean, we've all been given a gift of some success to be able to have freedom and choices in life. I do get a lot of satisfaction about helping others more than I was able to do in the past, particularly with time to help. So I think, my chapter, will have a business component to it, but we'll also have a little bit more of a social give back, mentoring, helping, advising, component that, not for financial gain, but more for, personal satisfaction. So, I'm helping a nonprofit right now organize all their business information so that they could be more effective. It's great to be able to have the time and talent to be able to help them. Anyone could write a check, but executing behind it is the piece that I think is very valuable. So I do have an eye towards stuff like that.
Cool. Hugh, you've been awesome. Wills, any final questions?
No, this has been great. That last point reminds me a lot of a person who I know very well, who, 12 years ago decided to not write a check to Colgate, but start a program there that had huge impact. So I think you guys have together created this legacy that will live on through people for decades to come.
Like I said, it's all about surrounding yourself with good people and luck and fortune to meet people at the right stage of life.
Thank you very much for listening. In this interview, we spoke with Hugh Davis, who helped found Greenfield Online and Crtical Mix, a successful serial entrepreneur by any measure. In this interview, we spoke to Hugh about how the worst decisions might simply be the ones you hold on to for too long, own it, and move on. Hugh pointed out that wisdom is real, and that when he was 19, he didn't appreciate that other people had actually been there, done that, and he didn't need to solve everything himself. how even when you're two founders in a garage, you should always act like the company you want to become, and how being an endurance athlete, Hugh was an Ironman, is great training for being successful and building companies and leading them for year after year, and much more. We are TIA Ventures, a seed stage fund that invests in early stage B2B software companies that have achieved visceral product market fit, that have teams that are ready for prime time, and have customers who cannot live without the company's product. We invite you to join us for the next episode of It's the People.